Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. This time, we're looking into something, it's pretty wild, basically. Can rodents sharpen their sense of smell using sound? And we're talking specifically rats and mice here. This all stems from a study that was published in Neuroscience and Biobehavioral Reviews, just came out last month. And the title is amazing. Sonic Sorcery: How Jedi Rodents Remotely Move Matter to Sharpen Their Sense of Smell. That sounds crazy, right? That's why I've got an expert with us who can help unpack the science behind this Jedi ability. But to get started, I think we should talk about, what we already know about rodents and the sounds they make.
Right. So we've known for a long time that rodents make these high-frequency sounds, we call them, ultrasonic vocalizations or USVs.
Mm-hmm.
The main theory has been that they use these sounds for communication, kind of like a...
rodent language?
Yeah, like a secret squeaking code that we humans are just starting to figure out. Exactly. But... this is where things get really interesting. A bioacoustics expert from the University at Buffalo, Eduardo Mercado III, he started to notice some inconsistencies in how rodents use these vocalizations. He's like, that's kind of weird.
What kind of inconsistencies? Like, what didn't add up?
Okay, so if we think about these sounds mainly being used for communication, wouldn't we expect to see patterns in the vocalizations that match up with specific social interactions?
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
Right, like maybe there's one squeak for, hey, watch out, danger, and another one for, I found some cheese over here. Oh, something like that.
Yeah, but that's not always what's happening.
Not quite. What Mercado noticed was that rodents often sniff right after they make a USV, and it doesn't really matter what's happening socially. That observation, plus a bunch of other inconsistencies in the research, it got him thinking in a totally different direction.
So he shifted from focusing on what the sounds could mean, like in terms of communication, to what they could be doing on a physical level.
Yeah, basics.
And what did he find?
Well, this is where his background in studying whale song comes into play.
Okay.
He had this aha moment where he started thinking about how sound waves might actually affect how particles move in the air. He made a connection to a field called vibroacoustics, where scientists use artificially produced ultrasonic vibrations to manipulate particles in the air.
Wait, so you mean rodents could be moving stuff around just by making these tiny squeaking sounds? That's like a superpower or something.
I know it sounds kind of crazy, but the science is there. Think about how sound waves can make things vibrate, like when you have a really powerful speaker and you can feel it in your chest. Now imagine that same principle happening on a tiny scale, with the particles that carry smell molecules through the air.
You're saying these USVs could be creating tiny air currents that basically concentrate those smell molecules, making them easier for the rodents to pick up.
That's the hypothesis. Mercado thinks that. By making these very specific ultrasonic vocalizations, rodents are shaping their environment of smells, almost like they're creating little pockets of concentrated odor, which they then immediately sniff up.
So it's like they have a smell zoom function where they can zero in on specific scents. That's pretty wild.
It is.
But how does sound actually move those tiny smell molecules around?
That's where the physics of sound waves comes in. When a speaker creates sound waves, those waves are really just vibrations moving through the air. And when those vibrations hit particles, they can cause them to cluster together, making these pockets of higher density.
If those particles happen to be carrying scent molecules,
then you're going to get a way stronger smell.
Wow.
By creating these pockets of concentrated odor, rodents are basically fine-tuning their sense of smell. They can pick up on faint traces of pheromones or other important scent signals that they might miss otherwise.
Pheromones are those chemical signals that animals use to communicate with each other, right?
That's right. They're super important for all sorts of things, like attracting mates, marking territory, even signaling danger.
So if rodents are using sound to boost their ability to detect pheromones, that could really change how they interact with each other in their environment.
Definitely.
It's like they're hacking their own sense of smell.
Yeah.
Giving them a secret advantage in the world of scents.
And what's even cooler is this ability probably evolved over millions of years.
So this isn't just some random rodent trick. It could be a really important part of how they experience and interact with the world. This is blowing my mind.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
Why should we humans care about all this?
That's a great question. And it leads us to some even bigger implications of this research, which we'll get into in the next part of our deep dive. You know, it's just crazy to think that we've been studying rodent behavior for like forever. We use them as these models to understand human stuff. And this whole time, they might have had this secret weapon, this hidden way of sensing the world.
Yeah, it's like we've been trying to understand this game but we've been missing a big part of the rule book. And speaking of those studies, you were saying that this could have some big implications, especially for how we interpret the results of research using rodents.
Absolutely. Think about research on social behavior, for instance. Let's say scientists are studying how rodents react to loneliness. So they isolate a rodent, and they see an increase in USVs.
Right.
The traditional thinking would be, okay, that's a vocalization of distress,
Yeah.
like a call for company.
It's like the rodents saying, hey, I'm lonely. Anybody out there?
Right. But now,
Yeah.
with this new understanding, that same increase in USVs could mean something completely different.
It might not be a cry for help, but a way to actually enhance their sense of smell. Like they're searching for any tiny trace of other rodents nearby.
Exactly.
So instead of a social call, it's more like a superpowered sniff.
Exactly. And think about what that means for studies on things like anxiety or stress. If a rodent in a stressful situation starts making more USVs, we might assume that's fear or anxiety. But what if they're just trying to get more information about their surroundings through their sense of smell?
Yeah. It makes you wonder if a lot of research findings might need to be looked at again.
Yeah, it's a challenge for sure. But it's also a huge opportunity to really reevaluate how we think about how rodents perceive and react to their environment. And if we understand that better, we might have a better shot at understanding the human conditions we're trying to model with rodents.
It's a good reminder that even with creatures we've studied for so long, we still have a lot to learn.
It is.
Yeah.
And it really shows the importance of curiosity and questioning what we think we know. Even the small sound can lead to big discoveries if we're really paying attention.
And Ricardo really did pay attention. He didn't just see those inconsistencies. He dug deeper, connected the dots between rodent behavior, whale song, and the physics of sound.
Yeah, he did some amazing work.
He basically cracked a secret code.
And that's what's so cool about science. Sometimes it's about putting together pieces of information that seem totally separate, and then suddenly you see a hidden pattern.
And speaking of hidden patterns, you mentioned earlier how this sonic sniffing could have implications for evolution.
Right.
What kind of advantage do you think this ability would have given rodents over millions of years of evolution?
Well, you have to remember, smell is like everything for a rodent.
Right. It's how they find food, avoid danger, find mates.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's their lifeline. So anything that improves their sense of smell would be a huge advantage for survival.
Makes sense.
So being able to detect even tiny traces of pheromones could mean the difference between finding a mate or not.
You're finding food or going hungry.
Exactly. And on the flip side, imagine being able to smell a predator coming from farther away. That extra time could be the difference between life and death.
So sonic sniffing isn't just a cool trick. It's something that's been shaped by millions of years of evolution.
It is. And what's even more fascinating is the possible connection between the sense of smell and the development of higher cognitive functions, like attention and memory.
Wait, are you saying that sniffing could have played a role in the evolution of intelligence?
It's a really interesting idea. There's more and more evidence that the sense of smell, especially this focused kind of olfactory exploration, might have been the foundation for more complex brain processes. So
her ability to think, to remember, to focus could all stem from something as basic as sniffing out a meal.
It's a cool thought, right?
It is.
It really shows how interconnected our senses and our cognitive abilities are.
And it makes you think, what other seemingly simple animal behaviors might be hiding the keys to understanding how the human mind works?
Right. It's a great question. But let's not forget about the potential practical applications of this research, too.
Oh, yeah. We've talked about sound waves and evolution and all this amazing stuff, but how can we actually use this knowledge to help humans?
Well, there are some really exciting possibilities. One of them involves a field we haven't even touched on yet, nanotechnology.
Okay, now we're talking. Microscopic robots, self-assembling materials. What do Jedi rodents have to do with all that?
It all goes back to that idea of manipulating matter with sound. Remember, Mercado's research suggests that rodents might be using USVs to create those tiny clusters of odor molecules. So what if we could use that same principle to manipulate other types of particles, like nanoparticles?
Whoa. So instead of concentrating smells, we could use sound to build tiny machines or deliver medicine to specific cells in the body.
Exactly.
That's like microscopic surgery with sound waves.
It is, and the applications are huge, from targeted drug delivery to developing brand new materials.
It's like a whole new toolkit for scientists and engineers. Who would have thought that, studying how rodents sniff, could lead to all this.
It's pretty amazing. It shows you why basic research is so important and why we need to be open to exploring the natural world, because you never know where you'll find the next big discovery.
I love that. But before we get ahead of ourselves and start building sonic nanobots, we need to know for sure that this sonic sniffing is really happening. So how do researchers go about proving this theory?
Well, that's a great question. And it takes us into the world of some really advanced research techniques.
Yeah.
And the challenges of studying these ultrasonic vocalizations in the lab. Yeah, it definitely takes some serious technology.
Yeah.
To capture and analyze these high-frequency sounds. I mean, we're talking about sounds that are way beyond what humans can hear.
Right, ultrasonic.
Exactly. So you need these super sensitive microphones and recording equipment just to pick up those sounds.
So let's say we've got our tiny rodent microphones all set up. What are we actually listening for?
It's not just about recording the sounds, though. It's about analyzing the patterns in those sound waves. Remember, Mikado's theory is all about how these USVs create those specific air movements.
Right.
So researchers have to analyze the recordings and see if the patterns match up with what the theory predicts.
So it's like trying to find a sonic fingerprint for each vocalization. But how do you actually see what those air currents are doing? I mean, sound waves are invisible.
Well, we can't see the sound waves directly.
Right.
But we can see how they affect things. Like researchers could use high-speed cameras to track how tiny particles in the air move. When the rodent is vocalizing, they could even add smoke or mist to the environment to make those air currents easier to see.
Oh, that's cool. So it's kind of like creating a mini wind tunnel for the rodents, recording their squeaks and watching how those sound waves shape the air around them.
Exactly.
But to really prove this whole sonic sniffing idea, we need to go even further right. We need to see how those air currents are actually affecting the rodent's sense of smell.
You got it.
So how do we do that? Is it like giving them a tiny smell test or something?
Not exactly a tiny smell test.
Yeah.
But you're on the right track. Researchers could create a very controlled environment for smells, like introducing specific odors, and then watching how the rodent's vocalizations and sniffing change. So, for example, let's say you introduce a very faint pheromone, something the rodent is really sensitive to.
Okay.
You'd expect to see a certain pattern of USVs followed by the rodent sniffing in the direction of that smell.
All right.
And then you could try disrupting those air currents, maybe with a tiny fan or a little barrier, and see if that changes the rodent's ability to find the odor.
You're not just observing what happens, you're actually testing whether those air currents are really causing the change in smell detection.
That's the idea. If messing with the air currents makes the rodent worse at smelling, that's pretty strong evidence for the sonic sniffing hypothesis.
It would be.
Yeah, definitely a complicated experiment to set up. But that kind of rigorous testing is what we need to really confirm or disprove this whole idea.
It's amazing to think about all the other discoveries that might be out there. Once we have the tools to really study this.
It really is. It's like we found this secret door.
Yeah.
And now we're starting to open it.
And who knows what's waiting on the other side? Maybe other animals have evolved their own versions of sonic sniffing. Or maybe we'll find totally unexpected ways to use these ultrasonic vocalizations. It's mind-blowing.
It is. It just shows you that the natural world is full of surprises. And that even the tiniest creatures can have these incredible secrets. Secrets that could change how we understand biology, technology, even the human mind.
It's been a wild ride. From tiny squeaks to mind-bending physics to the possibility of new technologies. And it all started with a simple question. What if rodents are using sound in a way we never imagined?
It's a perfect example of how curiosity and observation can lead to incredible discoveries.
Absolutely. So to all our listeners out there, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep listening to those tiny squeaks. You never know where they might lead you. Until next time, happy deep diving.